Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a story where the line between our technology and, well, the supernatural gets incredibly blurry. I mean, what if it already has? Back in the late 20th century, a whole group of researchers claimed they'd done exactly that. They said they were using everyday electronics to open a direct line of communication with what they believed were spirit worlds. All right, let's get into it. This whole deeply controversial and honestly fascinating field is called instrumental transcommunication. You'll hear it called ITC. And it was all pioneered by this dedicated international network of researchers who had a pretty simple but totally profound claim. Their big idea was that our technology wasn't just talking to us. No, they believed it could be a gateway for others from somewhere else to talk through. Okay, so how in the world was this even supposed to work, right? Well, their theory wasn't just about ghosts randomly showing up in TV static. It was actually based on this really specific, detailed model of the cosmos. So according to the messages they claim to be receiving, reality is made up of 7 different levels, all kind of stacked on top of each other. We're down here on what they called level 1, the physical world, which they described as, well, kind of dense and scrappy. But the main afterlife, this paradise-like place, that's level 3. And a whole point of ITC was to try and build a bridge between our scrappy world and their paradise. Yeah, they literally describe the process as a spirit coming down a stairway from heaven. Just try to picture that. A being from this super refined paradise of level 3 has to intentionally lower its vibration just to interact with our clunky level 1 tech. They saw it as this really dangerous journey where the spirit could actually get dragged down by all the chaos here on Earth. So for it to work at all, they needed a super stable connection, what they called a contact field. And this whole massive effort was being coordinated by a group called INIT, which stands for the International Network for Instrumental Transcommunication. You had key people like Maggie Fischbach over in Luxembourg, Friedrich Molkoff in Germany, and Mark Macy in the USA, all working together, sharing their results, and just trying to make this crazy technological bridge to another reality stable. So what did this bridge actually produce? I mean, what was the evidence? Well, the first thing they reported getting came through as voices. We're talking clear messages that they said were coming through their phones and even their answering machines. And one of their most frequent communicators, believe it or not, was supposedly the late Latvian psychologist Konstantin Raudeve. Now, this guy was a huge pioneer in recording spirit voices before he died back in '74. So for the INIT group, he became this key contact from the other side. He'd often delivered these patient, philosophical, and sometimes, even witty messages, like this one. But yeah, the researchers pretty quickly made a really disturbing discovery. It turns out their communication bridge wasn't exactly a private line. Once that channel was open, other, let's say less friendly entities could try and break in. And this created this huge, stark contrast in the kinds of messages they were getting. So on one hand, you had contacts like Raudive, who they saw as this helpful, wise guide from level 3. But on the other hand, they started getting these really disruptive messages from beings like one they called Afra. They believed this one came from a negative place they called Earth's shadow. And these, imposters, as they called them, well, their whole goal was to hijack the connection and just create chaos and fear among the researchers. Okay, so from just voices, the whole phenomenon then escalates to something even more startling. Actual, detailed images appearing on their TV and computer screens. And we're not talking about just random shapes in the static here. These were specific, recognizable pictures. And this is where things get really, really strange. They started documenting what they called cross contacts. Now, what that means is that different researchers in totally different countries would get related or sometimes even the exact same image at the exact same time. Now, that suggested a highly coordinated effort from whatever was on the other side. Okay, get this. Here's a perfect example from November 10th, 1993. An image of a French girl named Anne de Guigné was supposedly sent to Maggie Fischbach's computer in Luxembourg. It looked kind of like a painting. At the exact same time, a photographed version of the same girl popped up on Adolf Holmes's TV in Germany. For them, this was like the smoking gun, powerful proof of intelligent, coordinated communication. Right, so you have to be asking, what was the point of all this? I mean, was it just about proving there's an afterlife?
The researchers didn't think so. They believed all of these elaborate communications were building up to a much, much bigger message.
And then, in 1996, it happened. Maggie Fishbach received what the entire group considered its most important message ever. It came from a source who called itself Technician, who was part of this group of higher beings they called the Seven. And it talked about this grand cosmic project that involves all of humanity.
So this message laid out a 20,000-year-old plan. They called it Project Sothis. And its goal? To establish a permanent space-time bridge connecting us here on Earth with more advanced spiritual civilizations. The message even claimed this whole project had been tried once before, way back in the time of Atlantis, and that it had failed.
Now, a really key part of this huge cosmic message was a complete redefinition of the word morals. It wasn't presented as, a set of religious rules or anything like that. Instead, it was framed as this universal 4-step process for conscious action. First, you understand a situation. Then, you acknowledge the truth of it. Third, you devise a course of action. And finally, you act. This, they claimed, was the actual key to humanity's evolution. So, in the end, the story of instrumental transcommunication, look, whether you see it as incredible fact or just an elaborate fiction, it really forces us to ask a pretty provocative question. It challenges everything we think we know about consciousness, the afterlife, and the very machines we build every day. It kind of leaves you wondering, in all the noise of our modern world, what other signals might we be missing in the static?